Okay, so what I'm going to go through today is really from start to finish as far as we'll go in and set up a storage location. We're going to put in a harvest. We're going to go through and do some advances on a sale, do a sale, and all of that. I want to kind of show you how those things impact the inventory and impact the field profit center and traction. So the goal isn't just to show you how to do things, but to show you kind of how what the end results are and what things look like. So I'm going to switch over to traction. And the first thing I want to do is go in and show you how to add a new storage location. So storage locations are down in this resources area. You can go to storage. So first thing, what do you set up for storage location? I mean, storage location, anything that I want to keep inventory in. So if you're looking to use traction to keep track of bin inventories, you want to set up storage locations for each bin that you're going to have crop stored in. So it doesn't matter whether you own it, rent it, whether it's dad's bin and you use it. Now, one thing I'll say, if you don't care about keeping inventory at the bin level, if you just want to keep overall crop inventory, you do not have to set up storage locations. The only other reason you might want to set them up is that owned storage locations will show up in the market value balance sheet. So that may be one other reason why you'd want to add them here. So I'm just going to go, I've already set up these bins in here. I'm just going to go ahead and add in a new storage location. And the name that you type in here is going to be the name that's used on reports. This will, if it's an owned one, will be the name that shows up on my market value balance sheet. So I'm just going to call this home bin number 1. Now, if this was a storage location for like a grain elevator that I'm going to store at, I would say customer storage location. If it's mine, I'm just going to leave it at mine. So next thing is that if this is one that I own and I want it to show up on my market value balance sheet, I'm going to say the storage location is owned. I'm going to set up the entity here that it belongs to. I'll pick out the account. I'll put in the date purchased and put in whatever the purchase cost is on it. So what I'm doing here, this actually isn't going to go out and do anything as far as like a journal entry to my books or anything like that. This is just going to make it so when I do a market value balance sheet, it's going to show up in my list of storage locations that I can add a value to. So the next option I've got in here, and this is a newer option, I've got an option as to whether this is an open, whether it has an opening balance. So if you're just getting started with traction, and you've got inventory from last year's crop that's still in the bins, this is where you can put those opening inventory in. So this is going to be if it was like I started traction in 25 with this, if this bin had some inventory to 24, and I'm not going to be putting any harvest records in back for 24, I can just go in and say, okay, I've got soybeans there from the crop year 24. I've got maybe 10,000 bushels there. And my cost to raise it, we'll say, was maybe $4 a bushel is what it cost me to raise it there. So this again, so if you're up and going with traction, everything's right, you're not going to do this. This is more for the people getting started as a way to put that opening balance in. And again, this is a newer feature. I think this just came out in either January or February. And the shrink, we're just going to ignore that. That's used if I was doing scale tickets with this. We're not going to do scale tickets today. So once I've got that set up, I'll just say save and close. And I will see that home bin number 1 is showing up there with those 10,000 bushels there. If I click on it and I go to 24, I can see there's my opening balance showing up for it. So that's got that bin out there. So the next thing I'm going to do is go through and put in a harvest record. And one of the things I want to do is kind of show how that harvest record is going to impact my field profit center on that. So this is a field that I've already put just some field records into, where I've got some chemicals and seed on it. So to kind of show you, the field that I'm working with here is my 25 soybeans. My field is home number 3. We'll see this field. Well, let me get it right here. Pick home number 3. and update my report. So this field has some chemicals on it. It's got some fertilizer. It's got seed. It's got some equipment. Right now I've got about $46,000 of cost on it. So it's got everything there except it hasn't had any harvest for it. So now we're going to finish this field and put in the harvest field record. So putting in that record, I'm going to go to the field records area. And for 25, I'm just going to manually do a new field record. And I'm going to do a harvest field record. I'm going to go down and pick that home number 3 there. And we're going to say it took us about 6 hours to harvest it. I'm just going to leave the date at today. I get to the next screen. I've got the number of acres. I can give it my average yield. We'll say maybe it averages 60 bushels an acre. Maybe my total yield I know is actually 6,123 bushels, and it's calculated my average yield based off that. Now, you'll notice my unit price is blank. So I have not harvested any 25 beans. I have not sold any 25 beans. So the first time you do a harvest for a new crop year, the program's going to ask you to manually enter that price. So this price that I would put here is going to be my estimate of what I think I'm going to sell that crop for. So maybe I'm expecting to get about $10 a bushel for it. Now, the important thing to say is once I actually start selling that crop, Deductions going to figure out what the average price is that I sold it for, and this will get updated. And I'll kind of show you how that works. So this part is just kind of what I think is going to get sold for at the start, and again, it'll get updated later on. So I'm not going to enter any individual loads here. I'm just going to have it auto create a load down below. So that's just added a line where I can pick the storage location. And I am going to put all of the bushels just into that home bin number 1 that I set up. Go ahead and say next. I'll pick out now my combine there. Pick out the person. And save my record. I see a question there. Can you download data, hours, acres, yield, equipment, etc. from JD Ops? I am manually doing it. If you had John Deere Operations Center connected, those would show up in the import queue. I know from JD Ops we're going to get the bushels on it. I think typically we would get the combine for it. I don't think we get a whole lot more than that. Usually John Deere Ops will just give us the harvest data as well as the usually just combine for harvest and the tractor for planting. So to kind of take you through and show you what I've done. So if I go back and look at that field profit center statement again, so that same field, now what you're going to see is up above for revenue, I've got that 6,123 bushels. The price on that is $10 a bushel, the price that I put in. Now, again, that $10 is an estimate on it. As I get actuals, this will update. So as I start selling, this field profit center will get more accurate for me. So what we've done now that we know the yield on this, I can see now what my total cost on that field is $7.67 a bushel on it. And we figured our profit based off that value. So putting that harvest in does a couple things. One, it adds on this revenue section with the estimate on the revenue. Second thing it does, it gives the bushels so we can start seeing cost per bushel. The other thing you'll see is that equipment had some cost on it. So the equipment that get used in that field record will pass on a share of the cost of it. So looks like that combine is now costing me about 76 bucks an hour. And it has figured the cost that share of the field based off that. So that's kind of gone in and updated my harvest records on it. And I think I'm looking at Susan's question there. The other question is about matching delivery tickets. Remind me again at the end, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end there. So the next step, we're kind of going to switch gears and get into the accounting area. So let's say that at the end of the year, 2025, I wound up getting an advance on the sale. I'm not actually selling any bushels. The elevator, I delivered the crop to the elevator. They wrote me an advance. We'll say I got a $10,000 advance. on this. So recording in advance, I'm just going to go to the account register. I'm going to pick the bank account that deposit's going into, and I'm just going to add a new deposit in there. And recording that advance, I'm going to pick out the elevator, the co-op, whoever it is I'm selling the crop to. I'll set my date. We'll say this actually happened back in December. And what I'm going to do for an advance, I'm just going to pick the crop sale it relates to. So in this case, it was soybeans. My description, I'm going to say advance on 6,100 bushels of beans. And I will put in the amount of it there. So we're going to say it's $10,000. I am not going to allocate that anywhere. So this one, I'm just getting it. My whole goal of doing this advance is just to get it to show up in my soybean sales for my cash income statement side of it. And memo, I'd want to have a really good description on it. Advance on settlement number. And just save that information. So doing this, I've done nothing. I didn't sell any bushels. No bushels have come out of my inventory. I didn't put any cost or income to my fields. This one is just when I look back to 25. If I go back far enough, I will see that deposit showing in there back in December of 25. That I can see that amount was adding to that. So to kind of follow that through, if I go to my resources, I should have shown you this after I did that harvest. See that bin, that home bin number 1, it's got 16,123 bushels. If I drill down on that, I can see 25, 6,123 bushels for 25. I've still got 10,000 bushels from 24. So let's say now we're in the new year, and in the new year we've actually settled that crop, or we've settled that sale of the beans, and we're now going to get paid for the rest of that sale. So adding that sale in, I'm just going to go back to my account register again, and I'm going to add another new deposit in there, and I'm going to pick out who I sold it to, Farmers Co-op. And now I'm going to sell the actual crop. So let's say we wound up taking everything out of that bin to the elevator. So I'll go to crops. I'll pick my soybeans. And I've got crops in there. If I pick the soybean crop there, I've got them for both 24 as well as 25. So we can see I've got 10,000 bushels there for 24. I'll put 10,000 bushels in there. We'll say I sold it actually for $10.50. And then I also sold the 25 soybeans out of that, so I will go to crops. I'll go to soybeans. I'll go to harvest product and go to soybeans. Let's say my 25 soybeans in home bin 1, there's our 6,123. I will put in the bushels sold there. This one I'm going to do a real simple one and do the exact amount there and put in the price that I sold it for. I said that was, how much did I say it was? It was $10.50. So I've got the total amounts in there. It's a lot of bushels there.
Yeah, I think you got 100,000 bushels there.
Whoa, ouch. Okay. Big check. There we go. A little more reasonable now. So the next thing is I'm not actually going to get paid for that amount. There's going to be some things the elevator takes out of that sale. So what they're going to do is that advance that I took last year, they're going to subtract that advance off. So just the way they subtracted off it, I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm just going to go to other. I'm going to pick my soybean sales account. I'm just going to do the exact same thing that I did last time with that deposit. I'll pick my soybean sales, and I'm just going to say less advance from December 25. I'm going to do a minus $10,000 for that advance that I received. Not going to allocate it. I didn't allocate it previously, so I won't allocate it here. So let's say I also had some reductions, maybe for discounts, for drying, for things like that. So I will do another other here. I'm going to go down to my expenses. I'm going to pick out the expense account that this relates to. So if I had maybe some crop storage, that I had some storage costs that the elevator had, and if they took off maybe $1,000 for storage for the time it was at the elevator, I'll do a negative for the storage. If I also had drying or discounts, I would go down and I'd pick out that expense. So I'd pick out drying expense, put if there's 5,000 of drying, subtracting that 5,000. You're just going to go through and whatever deductions they had taken out of this, you're going to put them in until your total comes down to the net on that. So the other side of that is the storage and these drying. These are costs that I want to allocate to the fields. So what I would do for simplicity, I would just go to my zones and I would pick all of my 25 soybean fields and I would just spread that cost across all the fields. That is by far the easy button for doing it. So again, same with my drying. I'm going to pick 25 because I'm selling 25 crop soybeans and pick those in there. My memo here is just sold. Go ahead and save this. This is going to be the key to it. We get this question. The deposit can be used to calculate a new average price for the selected crop. Do you want to apply the new average price? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. My checkbook's now updated. That amount has been added into my checkbook. The things I'll see now, if I go down to my storage locations, I'll see that home bin number 1 no longer has anything in it. If I click on it, I can see, okay, this is where the amount was actually taken out for all years now I'm looking at. Had an opening balance. I've sold 16, looks like I sold 6, harvested 6,000 bushels, sold 16, gets me down to 0 there. And this drill down is nice. I mean, mine's pretty simple. I've just got an opening balance, a single harvest, a single sale. Your records is going to have a list of all the harvest, all the sales. Some nice things in here. If I ever want to get it down to just all the sales through a certain storage location, I can pick crop sales. That filters it down. If I just want to see the harvest that went there, I can go to harvest or can go to all in here. And for all of these, if I want to go back and see actually what happened, I can go in and go to the sale and see the actual sale from here. So it's pretty easy to get down to the details in this area. But the other big thing on this is if I go to the Field Profit Center report now I've gone in and told it I sold it and I wanted to update the sale for it and send that cost to the fields. We'll see that price now has been updated for the Field Profit Center to reflect what I sold it for. So my example is pretty simple, just a single harvest with a single sale. What the program will do is each time that I sell it, it's going to be averaging that. So the more sales I do, the more accurate this price per bushel is. So that's updating my sales and updating my profit in there. So I think the last one to kind of mention is that if you get a situation where I'm done with all my sales and I know things are, in this case, like maybe this bin number 2 beans, I've got 58 bushels left in that bin and I know that that should be 0. What should I do for that? The best way to do is once that's in is going to be to actually go out and adjust your harvest for it. So kind of go through the steps for that. If I click on that, I can kind of see, I think this one is probably going to be a bad example because I think I've only got a single harvest for that. So what I would typically want to do is go in, I'm not sure I'm going to have a good one to show you on this. What I'd typically want to do is kind of go in and do a bulk edit and adjust the harvest records on it. So my data is not the best, but if I wanted to go in and adjust my harvest records, I can go in and do a bulk edit. And if I know my harvests are too high by a certain amount, I can filter this. What I would actually want to do is filter this by year, by crop, and then go in by operation type of harvest. So I'm now just seeing the harvest records, and mine's not very good because I only got a couple in here. But I can go in then and do a bulk edit. So if I wanted to adjust my harvest and take it down by an amount, I can go in, bulk edit harvest, go in and change my total dry bushels at this point to match what was actually sold. And this would then go in and update kind of my storage inventory for it.
Yeah, we had another question here, Scott. Tell us about
Yeah.
your future plans for tracking the hedging or forward contracts in traction.
Yeah, Chris, I think the next session will actually kind of go through about how you do that today. As far as plans for tracking future contracts and that, we're kind of looking at some different options as far as how we can do it. Today, we don't have any way to track positions in there. Um, it is something we're definitely looking at. And again, the next session, I think, is next week. We'll kind of go through how to set up a hedging account, at least in Traction, and how to keep track from an accounting standpoint, that side of it.
Yeah, okay. Well, we just had one more slide for you, and then we'll close her down. We do have a webinar next week. Love to have you all back for that one. And as Scott mentioned, he'll be touching on hedging on that one, as well as some other goodies in there, patronage dividends, and likely some other things tossed in there for next week, March 18th. And then at the end of the month, we'll be going back to some basics in traction accounting. So we'll be hitting that on March 25th. And so I think we'll look at our calendar a bit and look at April and see where else we can kind of fit in some webinars. So if you had any recommendations of topics, would love to hear them. Other than that, Scott, do you have any closing comments?
I do not.
Oh, I actually do have a question here. Will there be a way to do load contracts and traction?
That's as far as tracking contracts, is something we're definitely looking at for the future. Today we don't have, so it is something that we're looking at for the future.
Going back to Susan's question about matching elevator delivery tickets, like if you have loads and you import those into
Yes.
traction, we touched on that a little bit at the very beginning with John Deere data coming in through the import queue, but later when you actually have the good stuff, right, the actual load information, and you want to import all that stuff into traction, what happens to that initial harvest record?
There is this crop inventory. When you go to field operations, go to crop inventory. This is where you can have scale tickets in the program. So the loads are scale tickets, and scale tickets are meant to either update yield that's already come in or create new harvest jobs with these yields. So adding loads in the program, the easiest way, if you've got like a scale or if you're using grain carts that are outputting a CSV file, or if you're doing all your scale tickets into a spreadsheet and save them as a CSV, the CSV import can import all those scale tickets and get all the details in it. Otherwise, you can manually enter them in here. So I'm not going to do a whole bunch, but just show you real quick. So like if I do soybeans for 25, um, what you're going to see here is that each ticket, I can put in the date, I can put in the zone being the field that it came from, I can put in the destination. So if that harvest record that I put in came from the yield, and now I've got the individual scale tickets, what I can do here is actually go in and put in the bushels. whatever the tare is, the moisture, the FM, and just have it calculate the dry bushels on it. The key is this harvest event. This will give you a list of the field records that you've got for that field. So if you've already got your yield data from John Deere, if I pick that here, it's going to update that for you when all is said and done. If I have not put in that yield record yet, if I haven't read it and I want to create a new one, I can do create harvest event here. So cool part about it is if you read the data in from John Deere, it's not perfect, but it gives you a starting point. You later import or manually enter those scale tickets, it's going to update that yield for you and kind of clean it up there for you. So it's all designed to work that way. So Susan, I wasn't looking at your question. I think that was what you're looking at. That is correct. What you either manually enter or import is going to override John Deere. Now, kind of the cool part about it is it's still going to keep a record of what John Deere was as a note. So if you go back and look at that harvest record afterwards, you'll be able to see the monitor amount, what it was. But the inventory in your bin, the inventory for all your records will match the ticket side of it. Good question. I missed that one.
Yeah, thanks for joining everyone, and let us know if you have any questions. With that said, hopefully we'll see you next week at the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.